I tried to download everyone's homework, so I've got a little folder record of all the homework you guys have been doing. But you were so good at doing homework, and there were so many interesting cases to talk about in this one that even though I gave myself a bunch of time to prep, it's not all finished. So I'm gonna go through as many of these as I can. I gotta say, broadly, you guys did amazing. Oh, screen share here. It's getting recorded, but now it needs to also get shared. Thank you, thank you. I've got a bunch of them saved in Photoshop that I'm going to go over. I know many of you are here. Feel free to come on stage if you want to chit chat about your assignment, how you felt about it, feedback you'd like to get, that sort of thing. I'm open. I'm available for that. We're going to try to go through a whole bunch, and then I've got a new assignment for you. I threw it together here at the last minute, so I don't have a demo, but it's going to be it's going to be one that's easy to understand. So let's get started, shall we? First up on here, I've got Lele. Feel free to raise your hand at any point, and if and Dustin can bring you on stage. Oh, hey, hey, Lele,
Hi.
how's it going?
Good. How about you?
Good. How's your feelings about the assignment?
I think I I felt pretty confident because I do 3D.
I can
So
tell.
I'm yeah, so I'm like quite familiar with low poly stuff. Um, but yeah, I felt like I might have done a little too many polys, and maybe I should have just reduced it to a little less. But yeah.
Um, you know, it's up to you. It's not really a rule about too many or too few polys. The reason I can tell that, do you know why I can tell that you do 3D?
Maybe because of the loops I did.
The loops? Yes, the loops. So this is something I think about a lot because I learned some basic 3D back in college. And I realized that when you model a face, a lot of these features are built in loops. This has been a really effective way for me to think about the facial topology a lot when I'm painting because you get this loop that runs around the mouth like this that traces like the space above the mouth um, and then kind of curves around that bump that appears under the corner of the mouth. This bump right here kind of gets traced by it. And so you have these upward facing planes on the top, and then you have these downward facing planes on the bottom. And the whole thing is kind of like a cone with the top cut off. Like it's kind of like a truncated cone around the mouth here.
Yes.
And this is something I think that you'd have to do a little bit of modeling um, or sculpting to really get a clear sense on, or somebody who has like thought about this and like really considered like the shapes of the face. But if you've ever done 3D modeling, you know you've had to build the face in these kind of loops because otherwise, when it deforms, it doesn't like deform cleanly, right? Um,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and so I think like however you want to subdivide it is fine. I think when you subdivide it this much, you do end up moving away from focusing on these largest shapes, and then it gets makes the whole the figuring out what the shading on everything is going to be a little bit more confusing. But I just wanted to pull this one up because the way in which you were mimicking like 3D topology, I thought was really notable because this is a piece of feedback I'm going to be giving to other people who don't have the same experience to try to show them this stuff. And I was really happy to see that your assignment had that in it. So very cool. Any questions for
Thank
me?
you very much. Um, well, I don't know, just if you notice anything, you can point it out, but other than that, just if you think the lighting is like correct or if I could have done anything any different.
Well, I don't think that it's a perfect recreation of the original reference, and I think you know that. I don't have any specific insights for things that I think you don't already know. But there are some other feedbacks for other people that I think are going to be relevant to the issues that you're having with this. Um, I think that like as a study, like studying from a photo, um, if you were going to try to get this a little bit more accurate, I think that starting with a little bit of construction to get like lines on the face lined up to be a little bit more like the original. Also, I'm pretty sure that you are studying a AI photo. Are you aware of that?
No.
I'm almost
I I
I'm
just
almost
I just
100%
like
certain this is an AI photo. And you
I don't
can
know.
see it when you zoom in
I
here,
kind
these
of
patterns.
that's true. I kind of thought that the eyes were a little weird, but
The
I didn't really thought
Yeah.
too much about it. I just pulled like the first photo of Pinterest.
Pinterest is full of AI stuff right now. You can see the way that this neck muscle kind of conforms to like the line on the hair, how it creates this like tube right here. This is very unnatural. It would be a little bit more confusing and chaotic if it were a real photo. One of the reasons I don't like using AI photos as reference is because they you end up with stuff that like if you go to study the structure and the anatomy is off, then you're not getting the lessons that you need. So while it broadly looks like a beautiful photo, once you start actually analyzing it closely, you run the risk of like observing things that are incorrect about anatomy and structure and stuff. So keep an eye
Yeah,
out.
that's true. Well, thanks for pointing it out because I really like I totally didn't notice.
I better point it out. I pride myself on being able to be pretty good at identifying AI images. So if this blew past me,
Yeah.
it'd be very embarrassing for me.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty useful skill these days.
I think it is. All right, thanks for coming on stage, Lele. This is Miguel Firewolf, somebody who has been with us since for the first class.
Oh,
Hello.
sorry, I'm on stage. I didn't realize.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess Dustin must have just brought you up. You don't have to be on
Oh,
stage if you don't want to be.
thank you. Yes, I didn't realize I was on a stage. Thank you. Um, well, it's a pleasure to talk with you, Peter, and thank you for these free classes. I think it was really helpful with my work at least, and all your feedback was great
Oh, thank you.
from
Do you have
the
any questions about the
past.
assignment?
Yes, actually, I don't know if I if I do it right because it's the first time I do a an exercise like this. So any feedback that you can give me from this one is really appreciated.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think you did an excellent job on the assignment overall. Um, I've never done this assignment either, so this was an interesting experience for me too. Like when I was doing my own sample piece, I immediately started to struggle with this thing because there's a question about like, where do you put the angles? Like what's going to make a corner? What really makes a line? Like what justifies changing the plane here? But I also know that like there are certain planes that I'm always looking for whenever I'm painting, and I think that I wanted to point out a couple of them to you, so to give you some insight into where you might have been able to like break up this face a little bit more effectively. So
Okay.
I want to say there's some of them that you made that were spot on. Like I'm always looking for this corner here at like the corner of the eyebrow. It's not like on the tip of the eyebrow, it's on the corner. And there's this bulge that kind of comes up off the eye. And you nailed that here. I think you really represented that well.
Hmm.
One of the tricky bits is the nose. And you have this square here, but I don't really think that's where we're seeing the plane change.
Like a triangle, right?
It's not just that it's triangular. I mean, we can see a little bit of the triangle here, but it's like the whole front of the nose ends up being
Oh,
a little bit more forward facing. Like there's a real, I think a lot of people have a real front to their nose, a kind of like hood ornament up front. And like that ends up giving us these corners to be able to draw like the top of the nostril versus the bottom of it.
Yes.
And then that gives us an edge for that side plane of the nose. And so on yours, you have this beautiful side plane, a piece of geometry I'm always looking out for. But then it doesn't really go into the bulk of the nostril, which is something that I think it feels like it's really missing here.
Yes, on that part.
The other thing I wanted to point out was like the way I was complimenting Lele, how there were the loops around like the features on the mouth. You can see what happens
Oh,
when
yeah.
you don't represent the sort of underside of the mouth here. That we know that there's this dark shadow under the lip. And so finding that I think is pretty straightforward. But then along the sides of the mouth, that underside tends to really continue. And if you look for it, you can see it where that highlight breaks right there. And
Yes.
there's that little bit of shadow. She's in very flattering lighting. And so this is one of the problems with models is they try to flood their face with light so that we don't see these plane changes quite so much.
Yes, that's
So we
correct.
have to be very sensitive to them. The same thing's happening on the top where we have like, while this is kind of curving downwards, this is curving up. You have it represented nicely here, but this continues further out. The side plane of the mouth, it really goes further out and expands. There's a whole mouth outside of the mouth. Like if you imagine somebody making a facial expression where they're showing their teeth and they're pulling their teeth back, this whole
Yes.
shape comes all the way out to the side here. And we can see that, and we can see the sort of skin blossoming up from around the teeth. And like it creates a lot of contrast through the opening of the mouth, but there's actually a full shape that kind of wraps around here. And as we like expand on these shapes, you start to see a bit of a more and you can see it here the way that like this highlight cuts along the
Yes.
side here. This is where the edge of that plane ends, and where we have a plane. The plane turns and goes into the cheek over here.
The cheek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And I just realized that the frontal cheek, I think I put it too much to the back. I just realized that point. Because right now when you are telling me about the loops with the mouth, I just saw the point that
Yeah.
unified the lines on the frontal cheek.
That's really what this exercise is for, is that as we are forced to interrogate this stuff very, very directly, it gives us the opportunity to notice these things that we wouldn't notice when we're just looking at these areas of contrast, like around the eyelids and the eyebrows and the mouth opening, things like that. The last place I want to touch on before I let you go, because we do need to move quickly, is the chin. The chin is a lot like the nose in that it has a kind of frontal plane to it, I think, in a lot of cases. There's like the upper part of the chin, there's the front part of the chin, and then there's the bottom part of the chin. And so I think that when it gets subdivided down into just two pieces, we miss out on the opportunity to show like the underside of the jaw here.
Okay.
See, like it cuts off very sharply, but actually I think that we're seeing an underplane to the jaw here. And
use that shadowing.
yeah. And so it might even be that there's like I'm not 100% sure on what the best way to subdivide this all is, but I think once you end up with a piece that's feels a little bit too wide and a little too flat, it might be worth it to investigate like where could you break it in a little bit.
Okay.
So that's my feedback. Thanks so much for doing the assignment. I thought you did an excellent job.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you, Mikkel. Hey, Tristan.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's pretty good.
How did you feel about the assignment?
Yeah, I found it a bit challenging, but not in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
I just I got a bit confused on where exactly to start.
Right.
So I did 2 versions, and in the second version, I tried more to work from the big shapes and then into the smaller shapes.
Sure. Well, that's the discussion I was hoping to have about this. I think that when you start getting into these tiny little folds through here, you have this really cool reference that shows off. Instead of having this very flattering, like glamour lighting, we have this much more artistic lighting that shows the sculptural nature of all these muscles in here. And it's a really awesomely detailed view of like the back musculature on this figure. But for this assignment, I think that by getting into all that stuff, you may have moved away from the most valuable parts of it. I would like you to see if you can look past all the granular detail and just focus on the biggest planes in here. How can we break this down into smaller pieces to look at not just like all the visual contours that are available to us, because we have a lot of little shapes we can break up here. But what I'm hoping to see is to look past those shapes. And you can start to see that, like, well, on the largest end, there's like the shoulder here comes up and it comes down. There's a clear break I think we can make on it here on the outside. I'm not even sure if we would want to make a fold where the muscle is. The goal is to try to see where are the overall geometry to get a better sense of this as a three-dimensional object and not as like a simplified version of a two-dimensional image, right?
Yes, I think that's also a bit to do with my interpretation of what low poly exactly means. I don't know how many polygons is still low poly, I guess.
Exactly, yes. So a little bit of vagueness on my part. But you can see as I'm breaking it down here how it is breaking down into something that feels a little bit more like broad geometry and not so much about the specific individual curves that are happening. And
yeah, this definitely circumscribes like the shapes more than what I did.
Right. And so when we get into this is the thing that like I was stuck on for years was wanting to notice every little high contrast fold and like feeling like getting better at art was about noticing the smaller, more subtle things all the time. And so I was looking for where are these lines, these parallel lines that are all running against each other? How can I find all the rippling little muscle details and folds and things? And what I missed while I got better and better at recognizing all those patterns, what I was missing was seeing like the big shapes in the hips. And how do these planes all fit together? What are the big geometric like underlying shapes that are making this figure feel 3D in the whole? And like by actually zooming out and paying more attention to the bigger, like more simplified versions of the figure, I was able to get the sense of them stronger and more three-dimensional. But like once I had that, I was then able to, because I was already had like this fascination with these smaller details, I could then go in over that structure and start to put in this like second layer of smaller details. And it gained a greater life by having a relationship with the bigger shapes. So that's the lesson I was hoping to get across with this assignment. And I think that, it seems like you have a really strong attachment to these like smaller details and really looking at like intensely detailed imagery. So I would keep that in mind as you're studying and as you're doing imaginative work.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, because I did this one twice.
Uh-huh.
So I was wondering, the second version, it said like better, or is it just more overly detailed?
The two of them seemed very similar to my eye. I only saved
Okay.
the one of them, but I looked at both of them. I can pull up I think this is the other one. Yeah, this is the other one. They both feel like a similar approach. You've come to different conclusions with them. Like this one is, I think, a little bit more accurate to the lighting that's in the reference, but the amount of subdivision and where you're putting your focus seems very similar between the two versions. So that's the main thing I
Alright.
wanted to call out.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Godslayer 27. I wanted, let's see, Godslayer 27 says, haven't been able to watch the previous classes besides the last one, but I did do the last homework. I ended up doing, and I want to say, he doesn't have a mic. It's fine. You don't have to have a mic. It's fine. I'm just going to read your comment, and I'm going to give you some crit here. That you do not need to do all the classes. Like this, the classes are designed to be jump in, jump out. So if you are new here and you want to follow along, feel free to make this your first week. This is an easy format for you to jump in and jump out. I ended up doing 2, although the second one I kind of got tired, so it didn't turn out as good as the first. Well, the fact that you did 2 is like a big effort, because I found this assignment to be pretty challenging. Neither of both resemble that were a woman in the first place. Well, I think you did an excellent job. I actually brought yours up as an example of some good practices here, because you showed your work very well. First, showing the more simplified large shapes here, figuring out where like the overall like volume of the cranium is and where the ear is going to get placed, chin line, figuring out if we're going to be drawing a line through the mouth all the way across, not just the cut in the mouth, but the overall like break across the face, like where is that going to go as a reference line? All of these extremely simplified versions of the face give a really good start to try to figure out where all the other bits are. Because one of our big problems in trying to do a low poly image like this is that if we try to like look at this and say, and just go straight from this into dividing down into like a triangle, like where the hell is this triangle supposed to be in the overall head? To be able to keep the overall structure of the thing while also dividing it down into smaller geometric pieces is something that we can't necessarily do in one go. And so by laying in some extremely simple structures first, having them be relatively light, and then breaking them down into firmer structures as a second pass. And you can see that they don't necessarily follow exactly the same lines. You can see these construction lines are vaguely making the side plane of the head here. But it's like once you get down to trying to find, well, where are these planes really going to line up? Where do we want to really like make solid decisions about this stuff? Then you've cut in, firmer, cleaner lines. And that's, I think, a really effective strategy for tackling this assignment. And so I wanted to highlight that as a positive example. I think the way that you've subdivided stuff, I think it looks really good. If I were going to make any suggestions, I would say that like the whole side of the jaw here feels like it's missing a little bit. I also wanted to highlight the fact that you didn't just copy the lighting inside the reference. It can be for a reference like this that has a really direct singular light, like a really direct key light like this, it could be fairly easy to just use the lighting from there. But some of these references, they have either very soft, nondescript, generalized lighting, or they have like multiple lights. And when you try to do that on top of the low poly thing, it can look a little crazy. So just departing from that and doing it your own way, just to sort of show this as a 3D volume, I think is a effective strategy. But I think that breaking down because like when we're looking at this figure here, we're definitely seeing the chin is kind of emerging forwards a little bit more than I think that you're observing here. Like you can see that we have this like wider chin that kind of emerges more, and then that's forcing this. There's a clear plane change happening here, and that's kind of leading us to recognize the whole, underside of the jaw. You've got this nice division here, which I think is really effective. But the soft lighting, I think, is covering up a little bit of the division that we would probably see on the underside of the orbital bone here. When people draw that mark here, I think that we're probably we might be missing a little bit of that. But I think this is an incredibly effective study, and I was really impressed with the level of skill. So, great job. Amanda. Hey, how's it going? Amanda didn't have a comment, or maybe the comment was after the thing, and I biffed it. Hey, Amanda, you're on stage
Hey.
now.
Yeah, I didn't have a comment. I was just like, I found it not too bad to do. I do have a background in 3D though.
Uh-huh. Yeah, there was a couple of this reference you have is so good. And it shows off a couple of my favorite little facial details, and you simplified over them a little bit, and I just wanted to highlight them to sort of show people some, because this face reference you've picked is so like defined. It's like this really exaggerated face. I like the way that you have the kind of orbital bone like defined all the way around here. But then if you like this little division that you get over the sinus here, the way that this like bit pops out, this is a pronounced feature. I'm not going to show my face, but like I have a fairly pronounced sinus. So like the division across the forehead here and the way that like the bone kind of sticks out and creates this like back and forth wiggle in the forehead. Like this guy's got this really clear, he's got these really clear planes in the forehead, and you don't always see it in people, especially more feminine people. They will sometimes have like a really smooth, round kind of hood on top of their head. But this guy he's got his like big bold sinus up here, which I think is kind of cool. And like it allows us to kind of see the bone that goes around the eye like all the way around. I'd say the same thing about like the you can really see that ring going around the mouth on this guy as well. Something that's really like I'm always looking out for on figures as well is like the underplane on the way the mouth is kind of emerging forwards. And you've got it, but it ends up kind of being this zigzaggy form here. While there's got to be a simpler way of breaking this down.
The mouth part was particularly tricky.
Yeah, figuring it out, because it's like I'm sure that there's like a Loomis method or whatever that you can use to break it down, but there's something about like just sticking yourself in the deep end on it and trying to solve it. You're like trying to come up with your own solution for it that I think is kind of interesting as like a way of adding challenge to this. Is Dustin did you raise your hand, or is Dustin just throwing people on stage, forcing them on mic?
I raised my hand.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I wasn't sure. People were coming on stage so fast and like they almost seemed confused coming up. It's like I was like, I don't want to like try to force people on mic if they don't want to be. But yeah, do you have any questions for me?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. Well, great job on the homework. All right, we have Paper. Paper says, this was a lot funner than I thought it would be. Hey, Paper.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. How's your experience with the assignment?
It wasn't too bad. I don't really practice human faces much, like at all. So at first this was a little daunting, like oh, okay, we'll see how this goes. But I just kind of did my thing with it, and as I was going, I found it to be a lot easier than I expected.
Great.
And I think it's partially because of how I approached it. Like, I tend to like just figure out where kind of shapes are in like the lights and the shadows,
Mhm.
and just kind of derive the volumes from that. And then just kind of was putting down what I was seeing, so it wasn't as bad as I thought.
Yeah, there was one feature in particular on this reference that I wanted to call out, because one of the things I like about this assignment is like sort of interrogating some of these shapes that are sometimes fairly subtle and trying to make them a little bit more explicit. And for this guy, it was these lips. He's got very defined lips. And I feel like we get this sense on the lips here that there's like a couple of different really distinct plane changes. Like there's an upper lip, and then there's kind of like a forward lip, and then there's an under lip. Right? Like we have this plane here that comes across. And he's just got like this super like volumetric defined lower lip, and so we get to see it pretty clearly.
I see, yeah.
And I think that there's even like a bit of an underside to it that we get even before it fully folds underneath. And then like on the upper lip, we get this, very powerful front plane here. And then it kind of curves up into the side. There's like a lot going on inside this guy's lips.
Right, yeah.
And so I wanted to contrast that with the more simplified take that you had made. It's not necessary to kind of get in here and divide this too much, but I just thought when I looked at it, like this was something that jumped out at me, that he has this super defined feature.
Right.
The other one was on the noses here. He has a really clearly defined sort of side plane of the nose. And I just noticed that like you came in with this really deep shadow in here.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to point it out and say that I think that this is one of those things that we need to resist sometimes. This desire to create these kind of outlines, because especially in the side of the nose here, we can definitely see that it goes straight from this side plane on the nose to like into the cheek. And there's not like a divot or anything here that's really going to be catching a shadow.
Right.
So by simplifying that down and taking away some of those more linear shapes, you might actually get like an even cleaner, simpler version of this figure.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, one thing I particularly struggled with was doing the hair,
Uh-huh.
just because it was like not very well defined in the image. Like, do you have any tips for, I guess, kind of making something where it's like not clearly defined, like how you would go about, trying to
I would
figure out
say
what
if
shapes?
I wanted to make it more low, like if I wanted to reduce the definition on it, I would just be looking to make it as like just subdivide it less.
Okay.
Like, he has this impression of this swoop here, but I don't really think he's got this really big emerging shape. So just trying to shave off the corners a little bit and keep this as simple as possible. I found that when I'm doing like just straight photo studies and I get to the hair, it's tempting for me to want to look for all the little subdivisions and extra lines and bits and stuff. And like, oh, where's this little flyaway going to happen? How many little points are there that are coming off of this bit? And my study started to get a lot stronger as soon as I went, the hair is shaped like this. And then did a little bit of shading on it and then started building in those smaller details as a later step. So if we're looking at this as a kind of like loose early construction, I would definitely say keep it simple, look for obvious corners that you can pull out, and try not to go, like I think you could probably fake in a little bit of curve into it, and just try not to draw too much attention to the fact that it's really difficult to see where you're going on something like this.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right. Well,
Thanks.
thank you for coming on stage. All right. We're doing decent on time. Next up is Nyantra. I do not remember why I saved this one. Maybe just... Oh, here, the comment. My brain is, quote, punishing me on this assignment. I want to point out that you say, as Pete would say, what I say is that that's the learning feeling. When your brain is like yelling at you because you are not always making the right choices, it's not that you're doing anything wrong, and it's not that you're being punished. It's that you are learning. And so that's the learning feeling. And I think it's important for us to develop a fairly healthy relationship with it, because we're not going to learn anything unless we expose ourselves to that discomfort repeatedly. You say, I think I didn't fully grasp the assignment, grasp assigning values properly for each plane. The light source of the picture felt a little tricky for me to identify. I had the same problem. I couldn't figure out exactly what was up with the lighting on this figure. I think it might be a case where there's actually two lights or a reflected light. Like she may have like a very soft spotlight going over the face, but then there's like there's like a reflector behind her. Someone is off camera over here with like a piece of foil or a board or something, and it's so we have like light coming in from two directions. That's why I was saying, hey, it might in my example I tried to keep the lighting pretty similar to the reference, but by doing that it might actually stick you in a tougher position. So really trying to figure out what the geometry is, just like boiling your brain to get through, like, and focus on that first, and then try to like think about the lighting on your own as a separate step. I think that's the trick to getting it done. Everyone said, hey, this is one of my first time doing a low poly render, and it's like, yep, that's because I just made it up. I don't know if this is a standard art assignment that art teachers give. This is just me trying to figure out what's the best way to express this concept that is really important. I know that whenever I'm painting a face, I am thinking about these different plane changes. And so I was kind of curious what all of your vocabulary was around the plane changes that you think about when you're painting a figure. And if you haven't thought about it before, then hey, now is a good time. I would say that the way you've constructed the planes throughout a lot of this figure, especially across the back, is pretty effective. The likeness of the figure, I think, is getting lost a little bit. So what I would do is, like I had mentioned on that previous example for Godslayer, try to figure out some of the big shapes early on and check those against the reference. Like she has this very pointed chin that creates like this 90-degree angle with the neck here. And so I think that missing a little bit of the volume of the chin is putting you at a bit of a disadvantage as to figuring out like where you are. When you have some of the big stuff out of place, then all the little stuff seems like it doesn't quite fit anywhere. And that's always a sign that maybe you should stop, zoom out, get some distance, and see if you can figure out where are the big things that you're missing. Because the more that the big things are out of place, the more it just feels like it's just not quite the same image to you, but in a vague, undefined, uncomfortable way. And so the more you can dispel that discomfort by looking at the big stuff, the more all the little details should all seem to kind of snap in together. The other thing I wanted to point out was the underside of the eye. a lot of makeup and lighting is designed to try to like de-emphasize the underside of the eye in women. And so you have fallen into the classic trap of not defining the underplanes on the eye here. So I wanted to point out that I felt like that was you've gone and mapped out some really great geometry along the nose. And then I think that's what's missing here, is knowing where the bottom of the eye is. Same as with the jaw. She has this defined like masticator here. This like that muscle that tenses when you clench your teeth on the side of your face. It's like pretty well defined with this like underplane of on the cheek here. And so she's got this part is so defined here. I feel like it needs to be represented in some way over on the side of the face. But great job. I'm glad that you got the learning feeling out of this, making sure that you are constantly exposing yourself to something that is giving you the learning feeling is going to get you better at art faster. So just, you don't need to be making life and study hard all the time. Just make sure that you keep finding your way back to that spot. And then we have a couple here from H. Eagle and from Waving, where we can see where the 3D has largely broken down. I know that H. Eagle, you had done a really great job on the cloud assignment. I feel like the rendering side of things is something that has come very quickly to you. But I know that you are still getting your feet under you with this whole drawing and painting thing. And I think that we found a blind spot, something that you need to be considering more when you're thinking about drawing and painting, which is how do we represent three-dimensional objects? And the face is so complex that it's a really, really tough place to begin that project. What might be effective for you to study is to look at simpler stuff. I know a lot of those still lifes can be pretty boring, but if you can find stuff to draw and study that confronts you with like large geometric objects, and if you can think about them, even if you were to just think about the face as very large geometric object, like if we were to think about it in the simplest terms here, where it's this kind of like oblong shape with flat sides, and then maybe even with like across the face, you could subdivide it down the middle, and so we have a kind of point, something that's more like a motorcycle helmet shape. Figuring out the biggest shapes of the face here. I keep wanting to draw things a certain way, and it's like, I gotta respect the reference here. That, and then the neck being a simple cylinder. That thinking about the largest, most three-dimensional versions of these shapes, if you can, the challenge here is not just can you trace it on the page. The challenge is can you hold it in your mind. Your brain is capable of maintaining a three-dimensional model inside its internal structure, so that when you are drawing and painting, you aren't thinking about the arrangement of simple geometric shapes. You are thinking about a 3D model. It was hard to break down, and I found myself trying to break down more. The feedback you have given to others has helped. Very good. I would, if this is something that feels like you have like a very little exposure to already, and so as you are studying this, keep an eye out for ways of considering the form, whether you're drawing a person or a car or a tree or a fish or whatever, thinking about it in its broadest, largest, most geometric shapes, ignoring all of the surface detail, ignoring all of the contrast, all the values, and thinking about it as a 3D volume. And try to do that over and over again, you will start to be able to see it. It will start to be able to like be tangible within your mind. And I don't think it'll take that many repetitions for you to be able to get to a point where you feel increasingly comfortable with this, and you'll be able to do an assignment like this very capably. So I hope that helps. And great job throwing yourself into this. And I can see that you put time and you put effort into the assignment, even though it was something that you struggled with. And like, you put yourself like through a lot of learning on this one. So I commend you on that. And then Waving says, I seem to see things not so well in realism. I'm more abstract, so it was more natural for me to Picasso this is probably the best way that I can explain my result. Yeah, I think that the results of the study looks really interesting. And I think as a stylized expression of the reference, it is very good. But I'm pretty sure, I'm not Mr. Art History, but Picasso could paint realistically. And like, I think part of the statement of Picasso was that Cubism was an attempt to deconstruct from a world that was obsessed with realism. Say, I can do realism, but I choose to break it down in a more abstract way. And so I think that you would be well served to study this realism. Yes, Blue Red, who apparently knows this, yes, and Delia says also, Picasso did do realism most of his life. And so in the spirit of the master, I think that you would be well served to try to do a more realistic approach to some of your study, because it will deepen your ability to do more abstract, more cubist stuff on demand. I think that you have to learn it to unlearn it. I mean, I think the image that you made looks good. But I do think that taking on the challenge, and if you're going to do it and it's going to be bad, and you're going to really struggle with it, and you're going to feel bad because your art isn't making you happy, that's fine. Like, trying to do a study and struggling with it, and then like feeling like there's a lot left to learn, is a pretty good position to be in, because we're not here to deliver top quality JPEGs to a discerning billionaire. We're here to be like, for some of us, it's expert artists who are trying to like reinforce their fundamentals and go a little deeper. And some of the people here are beginners that are being exposed to these concepts for the first time. So I like the approach, but I think that I think we found a blind spot for you, and I think that you'd be well served to address it. So that's, I think, my most critical critique today. And we're at 10 minutes. So I've got time. If anybody has any questions or wanted me to look at their thing really quick, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm going to go over the assignment. Oh, Kier. And I have Kier's assignment here because I actually did a bunch of prep. Hey, Kier. You are muted at the moment. You need to unmute yourself before you can talk.
Okay.
There
Hi.
you go. Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good, I suppose. Yeah, actually, this is my first attempt, and I was horribly disappointed in myself, and I redid it basically and just posted it before the session started. So it got kind of personal for me.
Yeah, this is what I've been saying. Confronting something that you're struggling with artistically can be a challenging experience.
Yes, yes. It was very difficult to just let it be, to be honest.
A lot of the things that I see in this that I would improve, I have given feedback already on other assignments today. I was wondering if you had any questions in specific.
Yeah, actually, for the second one, if you're
Ooh, is there
open to that.
let me.
Yeah, I just posted those in the homework channel.
Oh wow, there people have posted some late stuff here. Oh wow, you have. This one is really detailed, very cool looking. Ba, ba, ba. So, was there a difference in the way that you treated these different studies? Like, did you do one of them freehand and the other one you were tracing, or what was the big difference between the two? Because there seems like there's a lot of difference in terms of how they turned out.
Yeah, actually, the first one was kind of winging it, to be honest. I was not planning on analyzing it, and the second one is I deconstructed it to a, well, whole new level, basically.
They are on totally different levels. These two studies, I would have not guessed they were even the same artist looking at them. So
Thanks.
it feels like you did the process of confronting your dissatisfaction and throwing yourself into the assignment very deeply, like all in one big move this week.
Yeah, it was to be honest, just disappointment. So I was being dishonest to myself because I actually really love dynamics and studies, basically. And it felt like part of myself was actually missing. So,
well, I can see you in this work, even though it's a study. Your understanding and appreciation for like the flowing lines of the face are very much here. And this is why I'm saying it looks like two different artists, because this looks like, a fairly simple understanding of what the shapes of the face are, while this feels like somebody who has a deep appreciation for the subject matter.
Yes. It's one of my favorite topics, to be honest. So the faces are actually pretty difficult for myself because I'm kind of face blind. So it's basically breaking it down to some specifics and even understanding how they're built, basically.
Yes.
Otherwise, I wouldn't recognize them. So
I am also not amazing with recognizing faces, and so I am at a bit of a disadvantage drawing likenesses. So I always think about faces as this very like intricate flowing geometry, a lot like how you've expressed here. I think represents how I think about the geometry of the face while I'm painting in like a very clear way. Like you've identified many of the shapes I've talked about, and I have a fondness for them, and I think about them while I'm painting. While we usually don't outline them. The process of outlining them is really just a matter of externalizing these things that we might already have in the back of our heads. And I feel like that's what I see here.
Yes, and was what was I going to say? Yeah, the whole analyzing part was very freeing as well because I allowed myself to have fun with it. Hence, some kind of, derpy notes, I suppose. And so it actually really helped me to just, let loose, basically.
Good. I want everyone to be making work authentically, so the idea of letting loose feels very correct to me.
yeah, the whole reconstructing of the skull thingy, I also posted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're running out of time, and there was one more
Mhm.
person who had a question today. So I'm going to let you
Yes.
go, and feel free to come back next week and do this week's assignment.
Yes.
And I'll see you around.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you. All right. There was somebody else who was saying, I think it might have been Red Blue, says, I have a question. Red Blue, feel free to raise your hand. And happy to answer a question really quick. And then I'm going to get really fast onto the assignment. Blue, red.
Hello, hello. I do have a question. It's not so much related to the assignment, like I said. It's more about, as you might see, my lines while working in the assignment are very like wiggly. I don't know if that's the right word, but like I feel like it's a lot easier for me to sleep in the pen in the tablet as I draw digitally compared to physical or stuff. And I don't know if there's like any tip you have for that. Because it's a weird difference. Like if I go to paper, it's fine for the most part, but in digital, I just can tell very clearly. Oh, I'm going everywhere.
Yeah, like the pencil kind of digs into the surface, and you get these like confident, stiff marks. And then when you go digital, it goes a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, trying to make a confident, stiff mark with a pen. They actually have some software. I think one of them's called Lazy Nezumi or something like that. There's there's add-ons you can get, and like some painting programs on the iPad, they will specifically like simplify marks to try to make them stiffer and more confident. I really struggle trying to get line work to feel like this on a tablet, because I agree, it is easier on paper. It's one of the things I like about paper is that I feel like I can make stronger, more confident marks while I'm drawing than I can with a tablet. So I know it's possible to do this digitally, but I don't know. This is one of the reasons why I recommend a lot of my students in my class that I'm teaching right now. There are many students that are doing the assignments digitally, and I'm asking them to try working in pencil because I feel pretty strongly about this subject, that it's like everybody thinks, oh, it'll be easy to make good lines because I can always erase them and I can undo and I can transform things. And I don't know. I think it's really hard to make nice, clean lines digitally.
Yeah, like you said about erasing, like then you go to erase the line, the problem, and then you just end up going everywhere with the eraser
Yep.
on accident.
Delia is linking to Lazy Nezumi. I believe I
Oh,
remember the
I'll
name
check that
correctly.
out.
So in the chat there's a link to that thing. It's a smoothing program. It's supposed to help with this kind of issue. It's for
nice.
people doing like trying to do comic book stuff, to be able to get rid of that wobbliness a little bit, to make nice, confident comic book inking marks digitally.
I see.
But
That's nice. That's nice.
that's the main thing I have to say on that. I appreciate you coming up here and asking about this, because this is something I care about.
Well, thank you very much for the
you.
time.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thanks everyone who did the homework. This session every week has been so enriching for me. I love hanging out with you guys. This next one, I was again is coming from one of the students in my mentorship. He was he's talking about, maybe this whole digital illustration thing, maybe it's too tough, maybe it's too dangerous. So he's trying to go for something safer. He's trying to maybe figure out how to do tattoo also. And the question that was coming up was, how would you even do this? Like, you can't just take one of your rendered paintings and turn it in a tattoo design, can you? And I was like, well, of course you can. With artistry, if with enough artistry, you can do anything. And so the plan for this week is to do the posterize challenge. I don't want you to literally just use the posterize. Here. If you get the levels right on a black and white image and use posterize, you could see it kind of breaks down into like a 2-color, or let's say I'm going to give you the assignment of doing 3 colors. And those 3 colors are black. Oh, wait. You've got white, you've got black, and you've got 50% gray. Those are your 3 colors. You could use a different color than 50% gray. Actually, you can use any 3 colors. Let's just say 3 colors. You can make this into a color palette if you want to. You could say make the 3 colors and then, do a little bit of selective color or gradient map magic on top of it. You can get something like this going off of just 3 colors as well. But I want you to try to make an image I want you to do a study with just 3 colors. And I'm going to upload this into the assignment channel, into the homework channel that was just linked. I'm going to link it again here. Homework Pete. In this channel, I'm going to be uploading this. You can use this one if you want. If several of you use the same image, it's going to be easy for us to all be on the same page about this. But if you want to use different reference, you're welcome to use another reference. So I'm going to upload this right now, and I'm going to write it out. And no shading. I was just typing this out, and it's in the assignment, and I'm gonna pin it. Pin it. Okay. Oh yeah, pin it. Any questions on the assignment? Yeah, you can use hard round brush, you can use a texture brush, you can use whatever you want, but you can only use 3 colors, no rendering. It's a cat. Wants to come on stage and ask a question.
Hi, sorry, just quick question. So are we just supposed to be kind of like, in the previous assignment where we were breaking things up into polygons? Is it like that, but it can be like any shape and we're just trying to break it into those 3 values?
No, I wouldn't necessarily do it geometric. Like this example that I've created using the posterize filter is I would say, a rough, bad example of it. The goal is not to create a perfect posterization of the reference. The goal is to artistically represent the reference as best as possible while only using 3 colors. And the question was in the chat was that can we use like soft edges? No soft edges. This is hard brush only.
Oh, okay. Okay,
so
cool.
The goal
Thank you
is
very
to
much.
try to you can go and do a drawing all with like lines and then block in chunks of value, but it starts to get difficult to depict things like a watch or hair when we can't just try to make things look soft. And it does force you to have to break things down in ways that are simpler. And I do want to emphasize that the best, the most correct expression of it might not be the most representative expression of the reference is not necessarily going to be like the most accurate, like perfect version of it. Like you're going to have to artistically interpret the values in a way that's going to allow you to read all the stuff that's in there. You can see I'm having to push the values on this figure a lot in order to make it so that you can actually see he's got legs. Because you see, if we just tilt it like this, the whole bottom part of it turns into solid black. But if we wanted to include the legs, we'd have to change the contrast on that portion of the image as well. I don't want something to look burnt out. I don't want it to look blackened out. I want it to be a nice, beautiful representation of the reference with 3 colors and no blending.
Okay. And sorry, one more follow-up question. So are we supposed to posterize the image in advance and then use that as a reference, or just look at the flat image and try and figure it out?
I would look at the base image like this. And because this forces you to bridge the most gap with your brain. And what the goal here is just burn brain cells, right? Like creating a beautiful image to impress a mysterious billionaire is not going to happen. This is about making life hard for ourselves.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good questions. All right. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, the shirt is throwing me off. Yeah, like what are you going to do to figure this one out? I picked something that had a range of values, but was ultimately a little confusing values-wise. And you've got these hands that are fairly complex in front of the face. What a mess. What a huge mess. So good luck. I really look forward to seeing all of the submissions next week. Submit your stuff in the homework channel, and I will take a look at it next week. And if it represents a good example of what something I want to talk about for this assignment, you get an opportunity to come up on stage and stay out of trouble. I'll see you next week. Goodbye.